afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Redberryweo here, and welcome back to another quick Civil Air Patrol video. Today's video is me bringing back my yellow notebook from RCLS because there is a long list of skills and information that I learned that I still use a lot of to this day. And I think it would just be useful to discuss some of these things with you. So I'll go over each of these points, briefly talk about them, and then move on. But remember, the last video I mentioned that repetition is the mother of learning. The first tip here is use a timer. And something that I have learned over time, especially when I did something called marching band. I did marching band in high school. A lot of stuff was if you were on time, or excuse me, if you were early, you were on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, then don't come at all. And while that is an interesting philosophy, I've pretty much abided by that because whenever I'm not on time for something, like something is itching in the back of my mind and I'm like, ugh, I'm late. It really bothers me because this is I've set a higher standard for myself than I'm currently meeting, and it really bothers me that I'm not on time right now. And so I think part of that was instilled in me when I went to RCLS, because RCLS was basically like, you should use a timer and keep track of the time for your classes. Something that I've used occasionally is I would have a timekeeper, and so I would make someone else responsible for the timing in the class, and I would have them let me know like when half the class is over and when there's 5 minutes remaining. Sometimes it has been effective, sometimes it has not. And when I'm doing like an emergency services activity, I always have someone keeping track of the time for when we need to do a mission-based update where we're giving an update on like the status of the team, you know. So I do just want to say that having a timer, I always have my analog watch here. I don't have a smartwatch because I don't want to have to charge it all the time. So I like being able to have this and just being able to look at my wrist and be like, yep, it's 2100. And then we're good to go. Next one is, it's not about you, it's about your followers. And that goes into servant leadership. So whenever I've gone to an activity, like when I was the cadet commander at encampment, I let everyone else go in front of me, at least as many people as I could, realistically, without being late for the next thing I needed to go to, and I would be in line with everyone else. Because it's about the followers and helping them feel like they're being successful and doing things. And when I would eat lunch, or when I would eat meals at that same activity, I would sit down with the cadets, and I would say, hey, student A, what has your week been like? What is your favorite thing that's happened so far? Just so that I would be a little bit more relatable and just give them a little extra boost and being like, you're doing good. We appreciate the effort you're putting in. You're doing an excellent job. Or like trying to bring the whole encampment to do a cadence together. I really enjoyed doing those things because it was about everyone coming together as a team and putting the needs of the team in front of oneself. So really, it's something that I've taken to heart because I know it's not about me. And like with the YouTube channel, it's not about me. It's about us as a community being successful, supporting each other, answering each other's questions, and just doing the best that we can to provide each other with the resources and the knowledge that we ourselves have to benefit everyone, which is very useful for supporting everyone in the organization. The next one is keep them awake, move them around, shake things up. Keep them engaged. This is something that I actually do with cadets, senior members. It doesn't matter who it is. I do this with everyone regardless. If I notice people look tired and disengaged in my class, I make them stand up. I make them move around. I make them stretch. And I'm like, put your hands up, lean to the left, lean to the right, lean back, lean forward. I do stuff like that because it changes up the pace of the class and it physically moves the blood more. It gets it flowing just a little bit better, so it's not just sludge. And it gets them more interested because it wakes them up. If there are people, like one specific person that's really falling asleep, I'll have them maybe stand in the back of the room just so that they don't fall asleep. But I still do that because when we were at RCLS and we were tired, the leadership trainer guy, he would make us stand up. He would make us switch tables, and I was like, what? You're making us do that? And it was just so interesting to me that when I went back to my unit, no one did that. When I looked at lessons being taught in school, no one ever did that. No one made us just stand up and stretch At least in most cases. There were 1 or 2 teachers that I've had where they're like, let's engage them a little bit, let's do a little hands-on activity here and there. But a lot of times it was just all lecture-based. Or videos. In videos, I wouldn't sleep. But some people, there was one class, that's another story for another day. So, we're going to move on to the next one here, which is, oh, you guessed it, repetition is the mother of learning. And he made us say it like 10 times. We said it so many times. I was like, why are we saying this? It's because repetition is the mother of learning. Yup. The next one is, if you don't use a skill you learn, it's pointless. So, like, you could apply that to anything. Like, if you're in school and you're required to learn a language, like Spanish or French or German, if you don't use it, you lose it. So, something that I've taken to heart is, like, I still practice my clarinet. I don't want to lose that skill. I still practice German, which I used to learn for multiple years, because I don't want to lose those skills. So if there's a skill that you really value, or even if you may not currently value, but you think might be useful, just continue to practice it on your own, put it a little bit higher in your priorities, and that will help you retain it over time. Because there's the Yerkes-Dodson forgetting curve, I believe is what it's called, where basically it's an exponential curve of when you learn something and then you forgetting it. And so, like, it's a very steep curve, because after a long amount of time, that's just like, and it just flattens out to very low. So that's something to keep in mind, regardless of what skill it may be. If it's flying and you haven't flown for a long time, that's one thing. Another thing might be that language example. Whatever the skill may be, it's just something to keep in mind. The next one is, get a pad of flip charts and put it on the walls for people to remember. Now, this is a little bit harder to do with some units. Like, my squadron does not meet in a private location like a wing headquarters or something. We meet in a school. So we can't just put stuff up on the walls and expect it to be there when we get back. Something we did at RCLS, because we were the only ones using the facility, they taped up every single page of notes that we did during team activities. It was like, we would have like the learning cycle page, we would have the giving feedback page, the tell method page. We had all these large sheets of paper all over the walls. And so whenever you were sitting bored in class, you could always look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's a reminder. And that little reminder helps increase your chances of retaining that information for a longer period of time, which is the reason why they gave this example. The next one is, the most important thing to be a leader is to have trust with the people above, below, and with you. Trust is something that is needed for a team to thrive. What is trust? Trust is the ability to rely dependably on someone and know that they have your back, right? So if someone breaks that trust, that's the next point. To keep your promises, you can earn their trust, and it takes 14 times to regain that trust that you've lost. And I think there are different statistics out there, but essentially, if you lose someone's trust, it takes a lot longer to regain that trust than just to maintain that trust over the course of time. So if there is something where you haven't been entirely transparent with one of your peers, like let's say that you're having challenges mentoring your flight sergeant and you're not honest with the cadet commander about it, then that cadet commander may notice there are some problems. They may not trust you for coming to them about it, and the flight sergeant may not trust you because they feel like they're not getting everything out of that experience. So just as some examples there, trust is a very valuable tool that you can utilize as a leader, and it can take some time in order to earn it back. Okay, so the next one is try new things. It's self-explanatory, just try new things. The next one is keep your promises, and I do want to talk about this a little bit. In terms of mentorship, I have agreed to mentor a number of people in my capacity as CDC, in the role that I serve in CAP. I've agreed to help support people. But the thing is that I can't promise to hold them accountable and always be following up with them. And so what I do is I agree to mentor them, but they're the ones who need to reach out to me and take that initiative before we have those consistent meetings or just have those discussions in general. So, something, just as that example, I don't like breaking promises, and I don't like just actively making promises all the time and committing to a lot of things. So, as a best practice, I work together with whoever that person is. In that example of the mentoring, I say, I'm willing to mentor you and support you, but it's on you to reach out to me when you're ready to be mentored and know what you want to discuss and get out of those discussions, because the mentorship is not for me. The mentorship is for the mentee, the person who's receiving that. And if they're mentor ready, then they'll take that initiative and we'll work together through whatever they would like to discuss. The next one is mental is to physical as 10 is to 1. And so it's about how a lot of challenges are mental challenges and exercises. So like as an example, there was a senior member once for an encampment who wanted to do a fun picture of the senior member screaming at the cadet doing push-ups and post that on social media. If you look at the regulations, we're really not supposed to do stuff like that at all. That's considered hazing and like abuse, which is not okay. And so it was a challenge for me because at the time, like I was still a minor and I had to provide the senior member with feedback being like, I think there might be a more professional way to do this. And so that challenge was more of a mental challenge of what do I do in order to overcome this challenge. And so there are a lot of challenges out there that you'll face regardless of what realm that may be in. It could be in Civil Air Patrol, it could be in school, it could be with your job, whatever it may be. A lot of challenges that you will have to face are mental. And so also tying into that, be aware of your mental state. So then if you do need to take a step back in order to just mentally relax, know what tools you can use to relax, and also know when you just need to step away, get a drink of water, and chill. Because I think that that is a very good skill to have, in understanding what coping mechanisms you can have very well established so that you can overcome challenges, and then when they escalate a little bit too far beyond what you're comfortable with, know what tools are available to you to be best prepared for things moving forward. The next one is don't be a me monster. And this is something that I see sometimes, especially in written communications. So when I see an email, I'm using I here because this is just an example. Normally in emails, there is a trend of parallelism where there is an I, I would like, I have, I will, I. And it's just a lot of I's in the writing. When it comes to writing as a commander, as a team leader, whatever your position may be, the recommendation is to go with we and our. Like, instead of it being like, my vision for the squadron, it would be our vision for the squadron moving forward, fill in the blank, right? So there's that aspect to it. And then also when it comes to leadership, it goes back to that selfless service and putting the needs of others before your own. With a me monster in this little thing, I actually drew a funny little smiley face. And I'll show you. It's whoop, whoop, right there. Hello, friend. Hello, friend. With that, there's also the idea that some people take on leadership positions because of their personal desire to just be in a higher position, and not because they think it will be the position they can most benefit everyone else. And so that was just kind of a lesson they were trying to hammer home of, be aware that you may not be the most qualified for the job, and do your best in whatever you can while supporting the team and just giving it everything that you have. Another one is it's okay to move around and adjust. That one applies physically and metaphorically. So physically, if a team isn't working out and like you've tried a lot of different solutions and it just is not jiving and someone is really butting heads with someone else, it's okay to move people around and adjust. if the layout of your classroom, let's say you're doing a Socratic seminar and you've got people with their backs to each other, it's okay to move around and adjust. So in all senses of it, it's okay to move around and adjust. The more flexible you are with your leadership, the more flexible you can be as a leader, is the next one. And the point of that is, if you are very strict and very stagnant with your style, and you just approach everything with the same approach every single time, then, like, you don't need a hammer, like the hitting thing, when you need a wrench, right? So if there is one situation where you've got, let's say, a very upset cadet at your meeting, you're not going to use the same tools to calm that cadet down than if there is a fight going on between two of your staff members. It's just not the same approach to leadership and being able to carry the people through situations. So just keep in mind that the more tools that you have at your disposal and the more experience you have, the more adjusted you can be when you approach and handle scenarios that you come across. When you see the capacity of your followers change, your leadership style should change as well. And that goes into something called the development cycle, where essentially someone starts with really high motivation but low skills, and then they've got moderate experience and moderate skills, and then they might have fluctuating motivation with increasing skills, and then they've got high motivation and high skills. And it's like this cycle. You don't want people to regress back to different sections. So essentially it's saying that in that first stage, when someone has really high motivation and low skills, you need to coach them and support them through the program by kind of just serving as more of a direct mentor and instructing them. And then as you move through, you might just be kind of giving them general guidance because they can take initiative, they know what they're doing, and they have the motivation to get stuff done. The next one is make elevator speeches. And honestly, elevator speeches are especially useful if you're trying to recruit people into Civil Air Patrol, or if you're just trying to give them a quick spiel about what your job is, what your major is, what your life plans are. It's just good to know how to do elevator speeches or elevator pitches, which if you don't know what an elevator pitch is, it's essentially where if you were to get into an elevator with someone else, you should be able to pitch everything, or at least summarize everything major from whatever it is you're trying to talk about before that person walks out on like the 6th floor, which is not a long time. So that's a very good skill to condense your language into something that is consumable by someone else. Another thing that I've used is use odd times for breaks. That one's super useful. If you say you have 3 minutes, come back at the 57, cadets are going to be like, what? They're going to remember it, and they'll probably be on time because they'll be like, that's such a weird time. It helps with people remembering. So that's something that I've actually seen businesses do as well, where they start their meetings at 35 and then they end them on the top of the hour and they start 5 minutes later instead of being on the hour and on the half hour. No idea is stupid. It may lead to more ideas. That is very true. And sometimes there might be like a not great idea that's presented, but it's like there is something there and then someone could really run with it. So whenever you are being a leader of a team, be encouraging of the team members. If it's really off track, try to redirect that idea in a positive way towards the direction the team is going. And I've got 2 more. So the first of the last 2 is seek first to understand, then to be understood. The point of that one is to be an active listener and try to understand the other person's perspective first before you start sharing your own thoughts and perspective. And that's actually something that I actively do when cadets are approaching me for feedback, or if a senior member is asking me for how I would approach a situation. I would ask them first, what are your thoughts? Because I want to get their unchanged thoughts and opinions before I possibly influence that. So unfiltered, they're just giving me their thoughts, and then I can actually use their response and just make a few small tweaks and recommendations saying, ooh, this is really good, definitely do that, and maybe when you're doing this, you could add that in. And really engage and empower that person to take ownership of their idea, because they're like, this is what I came up with, and then just taking those small extra changes and really blending that into something beautiful. And I think the last one that I actually still struggle with, but I think is a great really tip for anyone, is the hardest thing about being a leader is knowing when not to lead. And there have been times where I've wanted to take charge of a situation where I'm like, wow, things are really disorganized here and I really want to step in. I know that the other person will benefit more from that experience of things maybe being disorganized and a little hectic, and then reflecting on it afterwards and being like, what do I need to do differently? Them thinking through those possible solutions and implementing it in the future. Because that's a good learning moment. Sometimes things need to be intervened, but if there isn't any like safety hazards or people aren't like at risk for something, like if it's a safe environment to fail, which I would say CAP is a pretty good organization to have soft failures in and make mistakes along the way because you can learn from them. And sometimes it is a very difficult thing to do to just sit back and be like, you know what, I'm just going to let it happen. And this is especially true as a senior member for me. When I first became a senior member, it was very difficult for me to just sit back and watch the cadets do their thing. Because I used to be the one running it, and I just knew what I wanted to do, when I wanted to do it, and I was running around doing things, and when I saw a need, I would fill the need, and I would work together with my team members to try to get everything accomplished for meetings or for activities. As a senior member, and as a senior cadet, that kind of shifts, because you are delegating. And you're giving those cadets and those senior members the opportunity to learn. And so by allowing people to just try things, you may know that it won't really work very well, but you'll let them figure that out. It's a good opportunity to talk to them afterwards and debrief and say, okay, so how did that go? They might be like, oh, that was not good. You can be like, okay, well, why do you say that? Try to gain an understanding of why they say that, and then work them through potential solutions for things in the future. So it's a really good tip that I still sometimes have a hard time with, because sometimes I'm like, I really want to tell them just, here's a solution. That's not always the way you should do it. And I think people learn more by you letting them learn and adjust on their own with some support along the way. So that concludes my RCLS tips that I learned back in 2013, and a lot of them I still use to this day. So if you have any tips or tricks that you have learned over the course of your career, over your life, anywhere, please feel free to include them in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and that is all, folks. Until next time. Toodles.